MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, looking at USC. We've got Matt Lowry on the line. You can catch him and the rest of the crew there at Conquest Chronicles, covering USC athletics and getting us set for the football season, which starts in just a few weeks at Media Days and then on through, of course, August camp. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Just waiting for college football season to get here. We're so close. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and once it gets here, maybe some bad news is going to stop for USC because the recruiting had been on an upswing after a downturn early in the offseason. And, of course, you had the Cliff Kingsbury issue and a number of other things hitting the program following 5-7. And now, just in the last week, we've got this situation where a former USC assistant is filing a lawsuit contending that he actually witnessed payments being made to recruits and players. And if this is substantiated, then this becomes a huge story.
Yeah, so right now, USC is investigating a lawsuit from Rick Courtwright, who used to be a defensive quality control assistant during the 2016 through 2018 seasons, and right now he filed a lawsuit, basically saying that he was fired for whistleblowing for some NCAA violations, and what it was that he witnessed two graduate assistants paying two undergrad students for taking online classes for them, and that the payments were coming from defensive coordinator Clancy Pendergast. And after that, he also reported a couple of safety violations, one which included the collisions between two USC players in warm-ups of the 2017 Washington State game. That happened pregame between Jalen Green and Joseph Iosefa, I believe. I'm not 100% sure if those were the two players involved, but after that, he claims that in the lawsuit, he claims that he was being harassed by a few assistant coaches or by a few on the coaches on the coaching staff, and that head coach Clay Helton basically went, well, either you can resign or you can get fired. That's according to him. Now USC is investigating it. We don't know how much of it is true. There's only his word right now, but that's something. If it's true, it's not good for the football program, and it's not good for Clancy Pendergast, who already was already in danger of losing his job to begin with.
So Courtwright was on the staff just this past season in 2018.
Yeah, he was let go in 2018. I don't know if it was before the 2018 season or if it was after the 2018 season, but I know he was let go in 2018.
All right. So if his claims can be substantiated, then again, we're looking at fairly major NCAA violations.
Right.
Okay. That's where USC has found itself before, and not too long ago.
Exactly. And not only that, but it's not good, especially given that USC, the university, is dealing with a lot of, how can I put it, a lot of scandals that rock the university already. And they just had a new president come in Carol Folt. So it's going to be interesting to see what she does about this.
And we're also at a time in which a lot of kids are committing. I'm talking to writers every day about their various programs bringing in commits every day. And this is a point in the season in which kids are looking to start school pretty soon, get back to football practice in high school, and therefore they've made their selections after making a number of visits late in the spring and during the early portion of the summer. And USC doesn't seem to be in that place, and for good reason. Now, if kids are finding out here in the last week that the program might be under investigation, that's an obvious deterrent. All right.
That's correct.
Regardless, Matt, we do have 3 commits that have come in that aren't super highly regarded, but they are 3 stars. And if you look at most of the programs around college football, even the top level programs, and this is a misnomer among a number of people that think the Alabamas and Ohio States of the world are built on 5 stars, the 3 stars still maintain a huge portion of the roster, so they are not to be ignored. But 3 commits coming in just here in the last month.
Yes, so USC had 3 commits that came in. It was right after their elite camp that they just held back in June. 3-star prospects in Kyle Jurgens, Joey Wright, and Kobe Pepe. Now, the thing, as you mentioned, a good chunk of a roster contains 3 stars, 3-star athletes, and 3-star recruits. These 3 also are very interesting because they bring size. 2 of the 3 bring size, and one's very unique. So Kyle Jurgens, who's a 3-star offensive lineman out of St. Margaret's in San Juan Capistrano, California. He's an offensive and a defensive lineman, so he plays in the trenches on both sides. However, the thing with him is he needs to bulk up a little bit. He needs to gain some more. He needs to get more size if he wants to play on either the offensive line or the defensive line, which he could still do by the time he gets to USC if he holds his commitment. But if not, they might redshirt him, let him get some weight on him, or probably they might have him switch positions to linebacker or something like that if he holds that commit. Joey Wright, who is out of Bishop Mongue, out of Reno, Nevada. With him, he's very interesting because his size and his athleticism is what makes him very intriguing. He's 6'6", 297 pounds. Again, very raw. Has great, has good athleticism, great athleticism. And not only that, but a lot of people know Corey Foreman, who is the top defensive end in the 2021 class. He was giving him fits at USC's camp. So he's very promising to watch. And Kobe Pepe, who is also out of California. He's out of St. John Bosco. Very intriguing on the defensive line, brings a lot of size. And not only that, USC, by the time he comes in, they're going to be looking at most of their defensive linemen, their defensive tackles who are going to be draft eligible and who could leave early. So it's never too early to stock up on defensive linemen.
Just to get the rankings straight on these guys, Pepe out of, as you mentioned, St. John Bosco out of Bellflower, California, the 67th rated defensive tackle in the country, according to the 247 composite. Wright, the offensive tackle, number 99 at his position, so a top 100 player. So USC usually not delving down into those kind of ranks. 99th at his position, offensive tackle out of, as you mentioned, Reno, Nevada. And Kyle Jurgens, offensive guard, number 84 at his position, out of California as well. Got Matt Lowry on the line breaking down USC football for us as we are just a couple weeks away from Pac-12 Media Days, and then the boys hit the field for August camp and Fresno State in week 1. Jaylen Watson will not be playing this season, defensive back who's highly regarded as a JUCO transfer. And the defensive back position's mighty thin right now for USC.
Yeah, so Jaylen Watson announced on Friday that on his Twitter account that due to academic reasons that he will not enroll at USC. He said on there that he's going to take a red shirt and then he's going to look to reopen his recruiting. And that's huge right now, given, as you mentioned, the defensive back depth is not what it is at USC. He was expected to come in and possibly compete for a rotation spot at corner or maybe a starting spot at cornerback. That was before Chris Steele ended up coming in, but due to Watson's college experience playing at the JUCO level, it was possible. Not only that, but he brought size to the corner position. However, now we won't know that, at least on USC's point, because of the academic reasons and because he won't be able to enroll at USC. Now, we've seen things change. He could take a year to try to get things straight and then possibly try it again next year. We don't know how that'll work out, but as of now, don't anticipate Jaylen Watson being at USC and possibly ending up somewhere else next season.
All right, we got Matt Lowry on the line. You can catch him and the rest of the crew there covering USC athletics at Conquest at Chronicles. We have Matt on a regular basis to talk USC football, of course, and we get away from the football in a sense here, but it could gravely affect USC, UCLA, and major programs in the entire state as the act is being challenged here. So the California legislation is trying to push through the Fair Pay to Play Act, which would have colleges paying players, as I understand it, Matt, or the players having the access to uh, benefiting from their likeness. And they're so basically what has been talked about for quite some time in regards to um, this going through nationally. California is ahead of the curve, wants to push this through, wants to make this uh, enacted there, and the NCAA is putting in the big stop sign up.
Yeah, so SB 206, as what it's called in California, the Fair Play to Play Act, is basically it's allowing student athletes who are in college in the state of California to take advantage of their likeness and their images being used. So basically the jersey sales, autograph sales, or being able to sell autographs, or their likeness being used in video games, which has been a huge topic the last few years or so, but stuff like that. And it's already passed through one legislation, and right now the higher education committee is has till July 11th, as I'm looking at the calendar, till basically till next week or this coming week to vote on it, and it's expected to pass through. The NCAA and Mark Emmert sent a letter to the California legislators asking them to postpone the vote because if you remember or if you've heard, the NCAA is looking into, or they have a group looking into the issue of players not profiting off of their likeness and images being used across college athletics, and the NCAA is asking them to postpone the vote. And right now, there's like most of California's legislators are saying, you know what, you guys had years to figure this out. Now we have something for the state of California. We're going to go ahead and push through with this. And the NCAA is threatening to ban all the California schools from postseason play if this goes through, in the letter basically saying that they cannot have a fair national championship with this going through. So that would not only affect USC, it would affect UCLA, Stanford, which, by the way, out of those three schools, all three of them combined have the most NCAA championships across the major sports, across basketball, football, you name it. Three of them are 1 through 3 in the NCAA and NCAA championships. But it also affects Cal, Fresno State, even the UC Davises and the Cal Poly San Luis Obispos, all the schools that are in the NCAA umbrella would be will be banned from postseason play if this goes through.
Okay, so if California goes ahead and votes on this, it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a power standoff because if California legislation says, hey, we have allowed you, the NCAA, to take your time, and you're not moving on this. You're not making a decision one way or the other. Because if you think about it, when I remember this really coming to a head and becoming a national topic was when Johnny Manziel was suspended for a half in the opener because there was an issue of whether he profited from his signature. He signed some autographs, and there was a whole case about that. He was suspended for a half, even though the NCAA was very vague about not finding whether they could prove whether he did it, but they still suspended him for a half. And that was back in like 2013. So here we are 6 years later, and the NCAA has not done anything about this, nothing significant. They haven't done anything definitive, and California is trying to push ahead on this. So I understand the NCAA's point that, yes, if schools in a particular state or any school can lure student athletes in by saying you're going to profit from your likeness and image, then obviously that's a huge advantage.
Yes.
They would have a year's buffer there because obviously anybody who's enrolled at the school had already made that decision to choose that school prior to this coming into effect. But so if the California legislation does not listen to the NCAA and back off on the warning, then they're going to go ahead and vote this, and we'll see when it comes into play.
Yes, and if it goes through, so if the act comes to effect, it won't happen until 2023. So
Okay.
that's the latest, that's the earliest it could happen is 2023. Which basically gives the NCAA enough time to figure it out by that time frame. However, the NCAA, I think, wants to do this on its own time frame and probably trying to find ways to where they don't have to do it. And California is basically putting a full court press on the NCAA to do this, which is intriguing. And as you mentioned, it's going to be a power standoff. As I mentioned, and I wrote an article about this on Conquest Chronicles, I think this is just an empty threat from the NCAA. I don't foresee the NCAA following through if California were to do it, not only because they would face backlash from the state of California and its legislators, but from the Pac 12, the Mountain West, the individual schools, and possibly other conferences that the state or that California schools are in. They would face a lot of backlash from that because of the ban.
So if the vote's taken, if the legislation's passed as expected, then the NCAA has 4 years to get its act together and align with what California's done. I would expect the NCAA would want California's legislation and their rules that govern this payment to line up with the NCAA. That would be the only issue that I would find would be then California's already established the way in its at what rate it's going to be paying players and what the rules are going to be and all the conditions involved, which could go 1,800 different ways.
Right.
What the NCAA would want to do, and they have yet to establish anything. And California obviously has its legislation in place, and it's passed various levels. So they've got their house in order. They know what they want to do. They know how they want to organize and structure these payments and how they want to fund this, have the schools fund and utilize the money and funnel it to the student athletes. But the NCAA could obviously, they could still pass similar legislation, but have it be different. And then you've got an issue there. So it could be a bit of a mess, but there's time to work it out.
Exactly. There's plenty of time for them to work it out. I just think how it's going to play out is going to be very interesting.
Right, good stuff from Matt Lowry on Conquest Chronicles. So if you want to dig further into that and get Matt's opinion on where this stands right now, you just join him and the rest of the staff there at Conquest Chronicles and look up the article on Fair Pay to Play Act that's being voted on by the California legislation here in the next week. We're talking USC football here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Matt, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me, Mark.